Welcome, and their webinar will be starting in just 1 minute. The webinar will be starting in just 1 minute. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Champion Solutions Group, a 15-minute recovery plan for your disaster recovery. I'm going to hand it over to Jack Barnhart. Jack?
Hey, thank you, Kevin, and good afternoon, everybody. As Kevin mentioned, my name is Jack Bornhoft. I'm the Data Management Brand Manager for Champion Solutions Group, and we appreciate you joining us today to talk about your disaster recovery and how Champion Solutions Group, powered by Infrascale, can help deliver new options and new availability to your applications and databases as you go to plan or recover from things like data loss, things like disasters, and every present ransomware issues that are out there. Hopefully by the end of the next 45 minutes to an hour, we can help you walk through and provide a journey towards 3 different thought patterns, I believe, when you start talking about what solutions to bring in to drive the business and deliver on the promise of a 15-minute recovery time, right? Champion Solutions Group believes that any project or any problem or any solution, we should help you guys think differently about the solutions that you bring in, right? You look at backup and you look at DR, and it really hasn't changed in a very long time. We believe that the cloud is changing that, and as a lot of you guys have transitioned your email with Office 365s and the likes of that, we believe that the cloud is the next and backup is the next available solution set to put into the cloud. Right, and then when you look at the cloud technologies, are we acting boldly to help you guys solve the issues and really address the challenges that are out there? Right, are we being as bold from a solution delivery as some of the folks are that are out there putting this ransom out there and really trying to get to your valuable applications and your valuable data? And then, quite frankly, are we helping you guys deliver more back to the organization, back to the end users, back to the applications, and back into your customers? So we're here today to talk a little bit about disaster recovery as a service, the available options that Champion has, once again, powered by Infrascale. So let's transition and let's begin. Just a little bit of housekeeping. The call is being recorded. There's also a questions area in the chat for you guys to ask questions as we move along, right? The slides will be sent to you at the end of this in a follow-up email. And of course, at the end of this, stick around because we will be giving a Yeti cooler away for one lucky guest that participates and is here on the webinar. We'll run through the agenda and we'll run through some introductions, right? Some common issues in DR, right? You'll see a quick demo of what we mean by the Infrascale solution, and then of course we'll get to any questions and answers at the end of it. Let's continue transitioning through. So to start off, we want to make sure that we understand and get a pulse for the audience. So we do have a couple of poll questions. So if you could participate, we'll review these as we go through them. We'll wait about 30 seconds after the poll question is asked and show the results. So let's get started. Have you experienced a ransomware attack in the last 6 months? Let's give it about 30 seconds. Hopefully everybody's had time to vote now. See what the results are.
So it's about 70-30 no, Jack, just so you know, about 72% of the people said no, they have not experienced. 28% of the people said yes, they have.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations to those folks. Hopefully, as we continue through here, you'll see just another available option to continue the protection. And for you folks that have, I think you're going to be real surprised at the capabilities that Champion and Infrascale can deliver to make sure that if it should happen again, we're able to help you recover hopefully even quicker than you did. Let's go on to the next poll question, Kevin. Let's give it about 10 more seconds, folks. All right, Kevin, what do we have?
So 64% of you said could be better. 8% of you said not confident. And then 20% of you said you're very confident with your solution.
All right. Well, hopefully at the end of the call, we can definitely help you guys with some suggestions, right, and bring some new questions and some new conversations to how we can help you guys get there. Next poll question, Kevin. All right, we'll give it about 5 more seconds, and we'll get an idea on where we're at here. All right, Kevin, what do we have?
All right, almost half of you, 48% of you, are replicating to a secondary data center. 16% of you are going to tape off-site. Another 16% is backup only with no DR. And then 20% of you is other.
Thank you very much. I think as you guys we go through the conversation, right, it's going to generate some definite interest in how we leverage the cloud, right, to provide that not only that backup but that disaster recovery element and impact some of the cost structure around delivering DR back to the business. Let's do one more poll question, Kevin, and we'll move forward. Are you interested in a one-on-one demo and/or a free downtime impact analysis? And Kevin, let's give it 5 more seconds and we'll move forward. All righty, Kevin, let's see what the results are.
Well, I'm sure this is going to change after they get all the information, Jack. 50% of them said no, they're not interested in a one-on-one. 46% of them aren't sure. So these are the people that, that I think we're going to change their minds. And then 4% said yes.
Okay, awesome. Yep, and hopefully at the end of the meeting here, we'll be able to flip that, and you guys can see some new ideas, right? Have some new conversations, and really help drive some ideas around how to deliver disaster recovery back to the business. Let's go ahead and continue, Kevin. So real quick a little bit about Champion Solutions Group. We founded in 1979, about $120 million in annual revenue, and a very stable, very strong company when it comes to what we do and how we deliver our solutions and to our customers that we serve. Let's go ahead and move forward. One of the ways we do that and deliver that is with our technical excellence. Right, as you can see here, we have multiple certifications across multiple disciplines. The majority of our staff is and are engineers that are out delivering our solutions, including our backup and disaster recovery solutions with Infrascale. and it's powered by over 400 certifications and coupled with ongoing training as we go to continue to evolve our capabilities and our skill sets around the modern solutions that are being delivered. Moving forward. So as we step into the cloud and we move towards the managed services, Champion is filled with the delivery options that we have across multiple platforms, Azure, Microsoft, really the backup as a disaster recovery as a service, whether it's physical servers, virtual servers, and no matter what operating system, up to and including endpoints, we can deliver a managed service around taking those that DR, that backup, and that recovery, and having another managed service solution set delivering value back to your organizations to free up those resources to go out and do other tasks for the organization. And as I compared it to email earlier, I believe when you look at backup, there's certain tasks that are routine, right? Although it's never easy and things happen, I believe that the backup piece of the operation can be moved to the cloud and can be managed by someone else just as easily as email can. And the way that we do the disaster recovery and the orchestration we can bring, that can be automated and managed by someone else also. So for those of you who haven't thought about having somebody else working and delivering that solution, Champion does have a whole managed services team around driving that solution back to your business, back to your company. Let's go ahead and continue. So now I'm going to introduce Derek Woods, the Vice President of Product Marketing for Infrascale, to really talk about the meat that's on the bone, help you understand what the solution is, and then we'll move on to the demo. Derek, welcome to the call.
Thank you. So I'll start off a little bit about Infrascale. Infrascale is first and foremost a cloud software company, and we started off building cloud software back in the early 2000s, and we were one of the first in the market with an online backup. And that's come a long way from being quite expensive. I mean, it used to be somewhere around $12,000 a terabyte per year, and now it's included, or you have different cloud services included with Windows, like OneDrive and those sorts of things. So we decided to take our cloud expertise and take it to the next level and start moving into the disaster recovery space. And being that we were really the only player that had cloud expertise, that really jump-started our whole initiative. So we went from 2015 to being kind of a cool mention in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for disaster recovery as a service. 2016, we were named a visionary. And then 2017, we made it up to leader status. So the only other people in that neighborhood were IBM and SunGard. And if you're familiar, those are $250,000 plus type services to look at, and we're nowhere near it. So our commitment to the cloud, our commitment to quality and to simplicity has really led us to the relationship we have with Champion today and the continued success that we see across our whole channel. And the relationship is simple. Infrascale builds the tools. Champion uses those tools to deliver those services to you all. Next slide, please. There we go. So we'll start off with a quick story, and it's stories like these that have, again, really helped propel our success in delivering disaster recovery services for our customers. So this is a tale of two universities, and the first university is the University of Calgary, and then we have Ellen McCree from the University of Virginia as a system analyst there. So Ellen McCree was a customer of ours, but it wasn't until she didn't become a customer until after the University of Calgary was hit by ransomware in about mid-2016. And at the time, they went through their typical recovery process. Okay, so they got hit with ransomware, all the techs jumped on it. Within about 2.5 to 3 days, they had done a recovery from their backup systems and compared it against what they actually needed. And what they found is that none of their endpoints had been protected. And so for the university, that meant all that research information that all the grant money goes to. So it just wasn't an option for them to avoid paying out the ransom. Took them another 2 or 3 days to get a Bitcoin account set up, And then once they got their decryption key, it took them another 2 or 3 days to decrypt the hundreds of thousands of files that had been captured by the ransomware agent. And this was CryptoLocker. Fortunately, by mid-2016, a lot of businesses and organizations still weren't going public with their experience. And fortunately, Calgary jumped into the fray and said, look, this is what just happened to us. We hope we can, other people can avoid it by listening to our story. And Ellen was one of those people. And when she got on board, she said, I remember doing the interview, and she said, the funny thing was that nothing really changed from introduction to demo to implementation and getting it working. It just did what you said it was going to do. It was really easy, and everyone else, or all the other techs in the university, were so interested that she'd actually done a number of test recoveries just to demo for other schools at the University of Virginia, to show them what she had gotten. And fortunately for her, she had done that, because within about 3 months, her department was hit by CryptoLocker also. And the way it came in is they must have gotten a list of everyone who used a specific brand of office scanner and printer, and everyone received a scanned document from what seemed like their office scanner. She said she didn't even break a sweat, and used the words easy peasy. She was able to push back and recover everything, and the total downtime was 1.5 hours. So you compare what a disaster recovery solution does to you. In 1.5 hours, she was able to recover hundreds of devices, versus the 10 days of downtime and the $10,000 in ransom paid by the University of Calgary. That's the difference. Go to the next slide, please. So for those of you not so familiar with Gartner and their Magic Quadrant, Gartner is a world-renowned analyst firm, and they analyze IT services across the world. And their Magic Quadrant they have for each type of service. So this one is for disaster recovery as a service. And the magic behind it is the grading scale and the requirements that they put behind this. And they gather that from customers, experts, both collegiate and in the field. And then they rank everybody against these standards, and then they put you in this grid. So when you look at the list, your leader list are where your stronger players are. That means that not only do they have a solid market share and are continuing to grow, but the direction they're taking the service is also the direction that the customers seem to be in agreement with. And the visionaries are nearly there. Challengers are new players like we were in 2015. And then the niche players would be, again, just niche. So they specialize with just dental offices or law enforcement agencies, something like this. So the 3 biggest problems that any business generally faces when it goes into putting together a business continuity plan or a disaster recovery plan, whichever term you want to use, is 1, it's likely to be incomplete. It does take a lot of work to make sure that you're hitting all the items that need to be hit. And to do that under budget is also really difficult. So often what happens is it's incomplete, not because you don't know it's incomplete, but because you simply couldn't afford to make it so. So you have to make a decision of, what's going to be protected, what's not. The second is the complexity, and the complexity of the setup, the management, just using it in general. Even the buying process can be quite complex. And then the third, again, it's the expense. Until just a couple of years ago, DR services were, a good couple of $100,000 just to get started with, and that would be a limited solution for most people. Next slide, please. Okay, so as part of what you get with Champion is you really get a full evaluation from the beginning, even before you're paying them any money. And this is really important, especially when it comes to the cost of downtime. Infrascale has 2 main problems that we aim to solve for our customers. And that's 1, to eradicate data loss, and 2, to eliminate downtime. So Downtime and data loss are often joined, but they're not the same problem and they need different responses. And downtime is one of those problems that a lot of businesses may not have even truly evaluated. You may have data loss prevention because it's a matter of compliance, and it's pretty clear that if you lose a bunch of data from your customer database or your email server, things like this, that's going to cost your business a good amount of money. But what's the cost to your business if you just can't operate, or if certain departments can't operate? And being able to get this information doesn't need to be as difficult as it may seem first off. And that's something that Champion is going to be able to help you do. And then once you can evaluate your cost of downtime, then you can start justifying, okay, we need to spend so much time and money, and we need to get a solution in place by this time, because everything's relative. Next, please. The second step would be to take a look at the issues that are causing your downtime and data loss. Some of these are quite logical. You live in a hurricane zone. Hurricanes are obviously top of the list to address. It's a seasonal and a regional problem. But then the things that aren't so logical are things like hardware failure being one of the most impactful as far as the cost associated with hardware failure or any hardware issues. Hardware issues, human error, software, none of those have a season and none of those have a region, and it applies to everyone. So do you have a solution that applies to all of these instances, no matter where they strike? And again, this is the exercise that Champion goes through with you, and what makes them such a great partner for us. What's not on this list on the next slide is ransomware used to be grouped into a small malware category that only accounted for about 1.5% of the damages caused by downtime. But since 2015, ransomware, next slide please, has grown to become a category unto itself. Ransomware is growing at such an alarming rate that we simply haven't faced anything like it before. There's a great quote from some Symantec execs that said, humans have never been exposed to the rate of extortion that they are today. And that's really quite true. Next slide, please. Okay. Oh, it looks like I have controls now. All right. So ransomware also changes how you approach your backups. A backup that would work quite well for most other instances doesn't seem to work at all in the case of ransomware. And then when you look at the statistics of what the current experience is across the market with ransomware attacks, we have from 2016 to 2017, the average time between infections went from 2 minutes to 40 seconds. So that's a 300% decrease. 72% of ransomware victims are unable to access their data for at least 2 days. So that's at least 2 days of downtime for 72% of people that get infected. Another interesting correlation is that businesses that experience 3 or more days of downtime have an 80% chance of going out of business within the next 12 months. Now that's 3 days doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when it's not planned and you don't have a communication plan out to your customers or to your partners or to your staff, it can really cause a lot of rub that can last quite a long time. And that's why it's more of a correlation and out over the course of 12 months. Downtime is not an event that goes away as soon as your systems are back up and running, which is why it's so crucial to get them back up and running as fast as possible. And the last is a 2,500% growth in the ransomware economy. So the ransomware economy describes exchanges of services and money between criminals looking to turn profits using ransomware. A 2,500% growth of money flowing in that industry in 1 year is alarming. It shows that there's been a whole new organized cybercrime market out there that we simply haven't seen before. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I have control. I can do it. So the first thing is doing your eval. When you look at the different parts of your business, what's currently being captured by your plan. Typically, it's the mission critical items, and then your remote offices, branch offices, and any remote workers or any workers on travel are completely exposed. And that's not a good solution, especially since ransomware enters through endpoints these days and can spread across the network and even across networks. So you have to make sure you have a solution. With Infrascale, we make that very simple so that Champion can deploy the disaster recovery service for those systems that need to have a better rate of uptime and can't be down and out of operation for very long. And then for every other machine in your agency that's creating data that belongs to the business, you can protect that data. So you're both in this situation, you're eliminating downtime and you're also eradicating data loss with the combination of these two things. And of course, disaster recovery hits data loss too. Another big thing that we've just released is support for backing up hosted cloud applications. So as Jack had mentioned earlier, there was a big move in the mid to late 2000s to get off of your own Exchange server and go hosted. And there was a lot of rub with the industry at first, but every technician that I've ever spoken with that had finally moved off of managing their own Exchange to having it hosted just sings its praises. The amount of productivity you gain from not having that device and that system to manage yourself is amazing. But with that changes up your business continuity and disaster recovery plan, because now you're no longer in control of the infrastructure that's hosting a big part of your business. And those infrastructures don't have backup or DR policies in place. Typically, you can only go back, say, 30 days in time for Office 365. And that's not enough for a lot of people, especially if you have any type of compliance. You often have to have records for a number of years, not just days. And so this is something that is available to you all as well. Oh, there we go. Okay, and then the final part comes in when you go through and you're identifying all the different areas where business data and business value is being created. Then you have to make sure that you have the means to react accordingly. Some recoveries, like human error, which happen on a daily basis, are going to require recovering a single file or a single email. Other events like ransomware or a natural disaster is going to take out many machines on your network, and so it's more akin to a full network recovery. A lot of disaster recovery systems don't do both of those very well. There are different licensing that you may need, which means there's probably some different bolt-on services, new training, new user flows, and it just gets a little complicated. And worst case scenario is that you don't realize that you don't have the capability to do a, say, full Exchange recovery if you've turned on your granular Exchange recovery ability. Things like, I'm not sure if things like that exist anymore too much, but that was a famous kind of whoops by Symantec back in the day. So you have the ability to protect against both small losses and large losses. And this way you can make sure that you are hitting downtime and data loss from all angles and for all the people in your organization. So your techs don't have to turn people away and say, sorry, you're going to have to recreate all that work you did last week. So the complexity. And we have some good questions coming in, so keep them coming and we'll get to them at the end. So the complexity of recovery is quite great. So on the top, we have a recovery from a cloud backup solution, much like Infrascale's. So we can even say this is Infrascale's cloud backup that you're recovering from. And then the bottom, you have Infrascale's disaster recovery or any disaster recovery. The thing you'll notice is the top has more steps. And the top also says here 4 to 5 hours best case, where the bottom is a couple of minutes. And this is just to get access to the machine running a database. What you'll notice is that a lot of the steps on the top part are just preparing the recovery environment. There's actually not a whole lot going on with the backup system that you have. It's one step: restore clean database files from backup. And that's because backup is only designed to protect your data. So it puts it one place and then moves it back where you want it later. It doesn't have, and then its job stops at that point. Disaster recovery, on the other hand, is purpose built to quickly get you access to full functional machines so that you can quickly restore operations to, the person, the VIP, the CEO, or entire departments or an entire organization. And that's the big difference here. So with cloud backup, you have a lot of steps, which means there's more room for error, more room for delays, and it's just not designed for this. And if you take the 4 to 5 hours here and the 1 to 2 versus the 1 to 2 minutes for disaster recovery, you can see in this that after a couple days, it really does start to add up. And now this is a kind of an example graph of what how downtime costs add up over time. And this is something that Champion will go through with you. But you can see that for an 11 million a year company, on a 30% margin could be a little better there, huh? At 3 days, you're crossing the $300,000 mark, and at 5 days, you're getting up to 600,000. So that's a lot of money that's just going out. The new road to recovery should be a lot simpler and should allow for an environment where your users are doing work and then suddenly they don't do work. We have to plan for this. So what the Champions team will do is they log in from maybe their office, but it doesn't matter. They can log in from anywhere. We've had partners do full site recoveries from the side of the road. And they boot up the machines that are down, and then they reconnect the users to operate from the new destination where those machines have been booted. And then the production recovery steps can start after the downtime has been ended. In a traditional sense, the production recovery and the downtime ending are the same event, which means you take that 4 to 6 hours for one database. For just 4 or 5 servers, that may be three days to get that back up and running. And with this system, it doesn't have to be so long. And the final is the expense. So this is just a matter of technology becoming available. So you have traditional DR trade-offs. So typically you get performance versus cost. The more expensive, the better it should be, brand aside. So you have offsite tape backup, which is known as one of the cheapest, but from a management cost perspective, this is probably one of the more expensive ones, but we'll leave that there. Then you start going up to cloud backup, much more versatile, a lot less strict around the licensing, so you can protect more for less, but still spending a bit more. You have appliance-based backup systems, which this is kind of where the market stops until you get into the 100,000 plus type of situation. Then you have cold site DR, warm site DR, and hot site DR. Now the difference between backup and DR again is the recovery environment. The reason all the DR solutions get so expensive, and this should probably be more of a curve than a straight line, but the reason is because there's a lot of hardware and software being managed for the recovery side of things for these DR solutions. Now what Infrascale's done to provide a DR location so that you don't have to spin up new hardware and new machines just to recover your database or your virtual host, whatever it is that we use our expertise in the cloud to make that happen. So we're providing, typically we're saving people money on the total cost of ownership, about 20 or 30% on offsite tape backup regimens, but providing a level of recovery that is near a warm site DR type of solution. And that's, again, another reason why we got the honorable mention in 2015, and then the continued growth through today is just that we've been breaking down what's been typical of DR providers and redefining it for what we thought would make sense for the people actually buying it, the customers.
So
and
Derek,
with that, I'll hand it over to Seth.
Before we transition over to the demo, Derek, this is Jack. We got a couple of questions here. I think it's a good spot to stop and ask them. You mentioned that recover over to the cloud, how long can they stay in the cloud as they go to the recovery? Is there a time limit, or how does the cloud work with our solution?
We don't have any time limit. So as long as you need to be running from the cloud is as long as we'd like you to be running from the cloud. So we kind of built the service so that you weren't getting nickeled and dimed by licenses for expected functions. So however you need to use it, when you need to use it, that's up to you. You don't need to call us to say, hey, we want to do this boot. Can you push some buttons on your side? It's completely self-sufficient.
Thank you. And one of the other questions, we have some folks that are in law enforcement, and they need CJIS compliancy within the cloud. Is that something that we can handle for them?
Yeah, and actually, Infrascale is the only provider that has a CJIS compliant cloud backup and DR solution. So when you call in, just let Champion know that you need that compliance. We have a special data center just for that. But security is a primary value of the service that we've been here to deliver, starting way back with just cloud backup in the mid 2000s. So CJIS, HIPAA, all those things are pretty good. If you meet CJIS, you pretty much meet all of them.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Great. No problem. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'm actually going to run through a failover event, and I'm actually going to start at the end because we're talking about the downtime and data loss. In this case, it responds to the downtime, so I want to kick that off on the cloud secondary first. Now, certainly I can boot single machines, whether that be local or in the cloud. I can define boot groups. So if I had a different building on campus that I wanted to protect independently, I can certainly boot all that in one go. But the real meat of it is the orchestration, which allows a little more control over what's happening. Now, I don't have anything booted as it stands, but I'm actually going to kick this off while we talk. So we'll click on Run, and we'll actually kick off that orchestration group. Now, let me talk about, while that's happening, let me talk about what's actually taking place here. Now, in this case, it's just a drag and drop interface as far as what a setup is concerned, but I'm really describing, my production database, because again, your web server is great to have online, but if it can't talk to the domain controller for authentication or your SQL Server or whatever that might be, it's not very useful in its total function. So in this case, I'm going to bring up my production database, my domain controller. I'm going to wait, in this case, 10 seconds, maybe bring on that web server or whatever supporting infrastructure you have, and then maybe a workstation thereafter. Now, in this case, we're talking about a 15-minute spin up, but as you can see, some of these are already coming online as we're talking, and we'll see those come on in just under 2 minutes for this particular instance. Now, in addition to that, we have a little more control over the LAN. So in this case, I have outbound access turned off, so I can do a full-scale test, allow all those machines to talk to one another, but not conflict with my existing environment. I also have the ability to feed out DHCP, or more importantly, IP restore. So if you have, either a licensing that's tied to that MAC address, or even the IP address to extend that network out, so you don't have to, reroute your DNS and everything else, all that comes back online in the cloud and ready to tie back to that network. So as you can see, I have the majority of it. The only last one is that one that I'm waiting on for that workstation. The rest of this is pretty much online. They're finishing their boots now. But that's really the idea here. We're presenting you with a running environment, running system or running environment, not just your data. So let me take you back and rewind a little bit, talk about support for how we get here, because this is really the key to what, the end goal. But let me talk about how we get there. Now, going back to the primary system, in this case, I'm just going to talk about the standard, Windows, Linux, Mac. But we also have the more esoteric operating system coverage for such as AIX, Novell, and Solaris on Spark. The idea here is that you can go into, any environment, any machines that you have in your environment, and you're ready to go to capture that, DR it, and bring it back online. And in addition, of course, we have the VMware and Hyper-V integration as well. Now, I did want to talk briefly about deduplication. Deduplication is really happening twofold. It is a global deduplication for all the data that lands. It is a file and folder level deduplication first, and it is also a block level deduplication. So in this case, I have 78%. In the environment I have, it's a very mixed environment, but nonetheless pretty decent. Now, I did want to talk about the replication next. The replication is really key to getting that data off-site. Now, in this case, we have three ways to replicate. There's certainly bit for bit over the wire. It gets the job done, but it's not very efficient. There is a byte level delta, which you're probably familiar with, which is the next level up. It creates a patch to send to the secondary and apply that patch to the job to create the new job. And then finally, we have DDFS assisted. Now, this is what we've built to rely on our dedupe system to get that data to the cloud. And what we're doing there is we're saying, hey, here's a map of the blocks that exist for a job, sending that map to the secondary, comparing it to all the blocks that exist, and only sending the missing pieces. So to give you an idea of what that means, I have a pretty respectable 550 meg connection here at the office, but I have an effective throughput of about 35 gigabit, simply because I'm skipping all the blocks that already match. So when you already have a Windows system out there and you're backing up another Windows system, a good majority of that system is going to be identical. Now, I wanted to briefly touch on archiving as well. For those of you that still have tape backup, we do a similar function, but we don't do anything with tape. It's all a disk. Now, in this case, I have the ability to obviously encrypt it because I'm potentially taking it off site. I do track a media inventory of every disk that's ever been inserted, so you can go find it and determine what disk you actually need, or what, in this case, the equivalent of what tape you'd need to restore that data. And if I had a system or a disk in here for archiving, I could even drill into that disk and pull out files and folders directly. Now, in the case of, maybe it's a VM and we've archived it off, maybe it's a year-end backup and I just archived it off to the disk, I can also import that entire job back to the primary and restore it as normal. Now, let's talk about that for a minute. Even if I have, in this case, we'll just pick this VM, I can drill into that and mount that on the appliance and pull out a file and folder. Now, in this case, I can also restore the full path, but the real core of it is, even though I'm pulling that as an image, whether that be DR image, VMware, Hyper-V, I can just mount that image directly and drill into that partition structure to pull out those files and folders and restore them as you would traditionally with that data loss solution. Now, image restore, certainly we have the ability to restore back over the top of an existing virtual machine or a bare metal from those DR images. For the sake of time, I'm not actually going to kick that off this time, but we do have the ability to do bare metal restores back to those physical machines, file and folder level restores to any target, even out of place or off machine, and then of course the full-on restore of the entire image and VM to that, back to that host or any host in a cluster. Now, this whole thing is generally going to be managed by champions, but I did want to call out the dashboard and the ability to drill in and do the cloud application backups. We talked about this briefly on the slides, but we do have the ability to also back up those cloud-to-cloud workloads, whether they be SharePoint, G Suite, or Office 365 directly. Now, that's the core of it. Now, certainly there's more configuration and ability to do more, but more importantly, that's the core of what we do. And so in this case, I'm going to end it there and I'll kick it back for questions.
And as the questions are coming in, I just wanted to clarify that what you just saw was Seth did a full boot orchestration. Was that 6 different servers, Seth?
Correct. 6 different machines, a mix of Hyper-V, physical, as well as VMware.
Okay. Now, it may seem like, oh, okay, you just booted up 6 machines real quickly, but that's not exactly how recoveries work, right? So if you've gone through recovery with a backup system, whether it's tape or hard drive, you know that getting one system up and running is just part of the problem. Then you have the connections and the interconnections and dependencies between those systems. And with our boot orchestration system, you're essentially documenting what's never documented, which is the recovery flow. And in that documentation, there are pauses between the different groups where you can schedule different configuration scripts to run or run books, so that you can really automate a lot of the learning that typically happens in a recovery. And this is super critical, because in a recovery scenario, when a business is down, the sky is falling, someone's hair is on fire, so there's a lot of pressure, which means mistakes are more likely to happen. When you have to do a discovery of what the next step is and what the configuration changes are on a network during that type of thing, you really don't want to take those risks. And so what we've done here with the boot orchestration is we've automated a ton of the time that would typically go into a recovery as simple of an environment, even as small as, say, 6 machines. And if it's just a single machine, then you're sitting quite pretty. But I just wanted to reiterate, the steps that would go into this beforehand typically wouldn't be documented at all. And there would be a lot of discovery and learning through the process. And Seth just did it with the click of a single button. And that's what Champion's team is going to be able to do for your staff, or your staff would be able to do if they wanted to.
All right, well, we do have a couple of questions here. One from Brian. He wanted to know about the Apple file system and what your support is for that.
Sure. With the Apple file system, it's really restrictive based on Apple's allowance, really. So it's file and folder on the Apple and Mac in this case.
So replication does work, but it does it at the file and directory level?
Correct. Correct. Everything we capture will replicate out to the secondary. But in the case of Apple, they're very restrictive about what we can get, and that's par for the course with Apple, unfortunately. And so it's just basically the file and folder that we have access to.
So he follows up with, so the OS has to be pre-installed? ?
In the case of Mac, yes, correct.
Okay. Brian, I'm going to ask one more, Brian. So no settings restored?
Specific to Apple, no. Again, the OS is really locked out. Same with iPhone, for that matter. So it's really locked out by Apple, and we can't, unfortunately, access those files to retrieve them in the first place. So unfortunately, the OS install would have to be independent.
Great. Thanks, Seth. All right, one more question here from John. Does the service provide a testing validation report that can be done for proof of recovery?
So the backup reports we do have, we also have the video feed directly from those boots. So in that case, the answer is yes, in a way. We are also automating the video screen so that we can export that and feed it to you via email if you'd like. So that will be forthcoming in the very near future.
Okay. And then does the service have a sandbox environment to do mock failovers?
Indeed. In fact, in this case, I actually spun them up in that sandbox. So it's the same identical environment, but we're removing the networking to the outside world. So everything is coming up in that sandbox, and really with your production environment, the way you would bring it up in a true DR event. But in this case, I've just removed the ability from that network to talk back to either my workstations or my primary data center or my primary site. So I can do a full-scale test with the identical parameters in the same solution, and then just tear that down, and it's ready to go.
All right. Janice wants to know, how many test DRs can I do in a calendar year?
It's unlimited, actually, so as fast as you can do them.
Okay. Well, I don't have any more questions right now. If you want to continue, is there any more slides, Derek, that you're doing?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay, Jack.
I think we got one more poll, Kevin, question, Kevin, and then we'll wrap it up. And let's go ahead and take the poll question.
Okay. All right, Jack, it's what is your timeline to improve your DR? And as you can see, we have everything from 1 to 3 months all the way down to, 12 plus months. We have about 30% of the people responding.
We'll give it another few more seconds, Kevin, and then we'll continue on.
All right. Well, just to give you a total here, just to let you know, 10% of you 1 to 3 months, 29% of you 3 to 6 months, 38% of you 6 to 12 months, and 24% of you 12 plus months. So thank you very much for participating in the poll questions. It really helps us to get a feel for the audience.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so what are the next steps? Hopefully, over the last 50 minutes or so, we've talked about the new solution that will really help you think differently about delivering, both backup and, more importantly, disaster recovery into your organizations. Right? We do have as Champion Solutions Group, powered by Infrascale, have the ability to do this impact analysis, right, and really sit down with you and help you understand what's available, how to leverage it, and how it can deliver more for your businesses. We do request and are doing one-on-one demos, right? So we can really showcase the rest of the solution set that Seth kind of went over quickly today. And we invite you, please, visit getdraas.com for more information. And as always, our Champion 800 number 771-7000. And of course, we will be doing the drawing for the Yeti cooler and notifying the winner here shortly. Also, we'll be finishing this up with following this up with an email. So we appreciate you guys' time, your participation in the poll. To the team at Infrascale, thank you very much once again for investing in Champion and help us drive different thoughts around providing solutions to our customers. With that, folks, I appreciate it. Have a great day. We thank you for joining. Good luck with your backup and your DRs, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, and have a great day.